Hey, this is Sarah Mesley with eXp Realty in San Diego, and today I want to share with you some advice that might be a little bit controversial, but I was having this conversation with my seller this morning, and they were considering whether to rent their property out in California as they're moving out of state or whether to sell it. And I realized that a lot of people are not understanding the risks associated with renting a property out in California. And where this might be a little controversial is I think a lot of people expect realtors to be salespeople, and they expect them to always sell and say it's a great time to buy, it's a great time to sell. But I think what has caused me to have a lot of repeat business or referrals over the last 15 years is that I am a straight shooter, and I will tell you if I think something is not a good idea, even if it will cause me to lose a sale. But of course, whatever you want to do is up to you. Now, I used to own rental properties here in California. I've since sold them all. And I think that the idea of owning a rental property is a great idea. And it is really one way to build wealth as you're building appreciation. And also the goal would be to be cash flowing. But ever since things have changed during COVID in California, the laws have changed and they've really gotten a lot worse for landlords. All of my experiences with my tenants in the past, maybe except for one, were really good experiences, but I did a lot more screening than most people do. A lot of people are just doing a quick credit check. I was doing everything from background criminal, sex offender, eviction check, credit check, everything. And that was kind of helping reduce some of the risks, in my opinion. And if you are going to rent a property out in California, I would highly recommend that you be cautious and you do the credit check and all of that. But it's important to note that it is not so easy to get a non-paying tenant out if you're in California. I do have a great recommendation for an attorney, by the way, if that's something that you are needing or you're going through. I hope that's not the case, but it's not like you can just kick a non-paying tenant out in 3 days. So some of the most recent experiences that I'm seeing with people who are filing evictions are taking a year or so to get a non-paying tenant out. And the thing you have to understand is that doesn't mean that that property owner can stop paying their mortgage during that time. So it's actually causing a lot of people to go bankrupt. One thing I also try to explain to people is that I think people have the idea that like landlords, or as we're supposed to call them now, housing providers, are all these like huge corporations, but a lot of housing providers that I know are just regular people, and they happen to have 1 or 2 rental properties, and that's how they make their money, or that's they work and that's how they make some money on the side. And a lot of these people are, a few months of a non-paying tenant away from a bankruptcy. So if I'm talking to someone about whether they should rent their property out or whether they should sell their property, we're looking at all the pros and the cons. And of course, with any rental property, you have the risk that the tenant could damage the property or just not maintain it, and the landscaping's all dead, but worst case scenario, that they could destroy the inside of the home. It's possible. Or that they could simply be the type of tenant that calls you every time they clog a toilet in the middle of the night. Like, those are all normal risks, but a lot of times it's worth it to take that risk if your cash flow is going to be good and you continue to build appreciation over the years. And then, like I said, the biggest risk is that you'll be stuck with a non-paying tenant for many months on end and not be able to legally get them out until the courts have room for you, and you will have to most likely end up paying an attorney to do that for you. That's what most people do anyway. Now, the couple that I met with this morning, they stood to make around $500,000 or so in proceeds from the sale of their home. Now, of course, the downside of selling their property is that they won't be continuing to build equity, but they could buy where they're moving to in Texas. They could even potentially buy a primary residence and an investment property over there, or an investment property in a different state with maybe more favorable laws. Now, they decided that when they get to Texas, they'd like to rent for a little while because they don't know all the neighborhoods very well. And I think that's a great idea. But something to consider with that is they may be able to earn a ton of money on their money. So let's think about a high yield savings account. I personally have some accounts that are paying about 5.25% in terms of the interest rates. They're gonna, of course, change, but I'm just talking about at the time of recording this video. We looked at if you put, say, 500,000, or even maybe someone's going to pay off some credit card debt or whatever they want to do, maybe 400,000 into a high yield savings account for the time being until they're ready to purchase whatever they want to purchase. The return on that is actually incredible. If you do the math and you go to a calculator online where you are looking at the daily compounding interest, say 5.25 or even 5% on 200,000, $500,000, it is typically going to be a lot more than you would make in the cash flow if you were renting your property out. And then you don't have the risk that someone could be damaging your property because you no longer have a property. Now, I know that a lot of people don't like real estate agents because they don't like people who are salesy, but let me tell you that I don't really have much to gain from by telling you that. Now, certainly my clients decided to sell their property in this case, and so yes, I'll get the listing, and that's what they were already leaning towards anyway. However, it goes both ways, and it's relatively frequent that I tell someone who's thinking about buying an income property in California the risk, and they may decide that they want to buy in a different state, and I am okay with that. Now, ultimately, how do you make the decision? It's a personal decision, but my first recommendation would be get all the numbers. So talk to a local real estate agent. I'm happy to help if you're in San Diego and you want to find out what would you expect to cash flow versus what would you expect to net or walk away with if you decided to sell. Being able to compare those numbers is really, it's key. And you simply have to analyze your particular level of risk tolerance. I am not blaming anyone who decides to rent a property in California. I've decided it's no longer for me. I'm all for owning a primary here and rentals in different areas. Okay, so what questions do you have? If you've got any real estate questions, feel free to comment them below, or you can call me, text me. I'm always happy to help. And then if you have a property that you're curious what that property is worth or what you could walk away with if you decided to sell it in the future, I'm always happy to help. No pressure, no obligation. Feel free to reach out.